just wanted to start the day talking a little bit about some ideas around transcription and around how you might do it, and maybe some ways of practicing tunes as well. Different schools of thought when it comes to how you should transcribe. And I really subscribed to the idea that you should learn the song. People want to write it down, right? They want to put it into notation. They want to make it exact. They want to write it down. Well, I'll write it down and then I'll learn it. Well, you're adding an extra step for yourself. And I find that step is a big hurdle to come by, like when you're learning any transcription, you should just learn the transcription from the recording. Don't write it down until the end. This is my thought about it. Write it down at the end, because when I write it down, that is for me to share with someone. I will share it with somebody else by having it on paper, by having this sheet that I can say, here you go, and so it allows you to skip the step of memorization, because memorization is not the same thing as internalization. And I think there's a big difference, and I think it's important to recognize that there's a big difference between internalization and memorization, because if you just memorize a bunch of stuff, you're just going to forget it. We're just talking about, memorizing stuff for a test, right? And I'm sure you've been there. You cram the night before, and you get it in your brain, you say it on the test, you write down whatever it was, and then you forget it immediately. You let it go. You let it all go. And as you should in certain situations, like that knowledge, you needed it for the test, you got it, you wrote it down, and then you move on with your life to the next thing. But in music, in jazz in particular, and the way that we learn, and the language, and the way we're trying to absorb the language, you have to take maybe a slightly different approach, where you are learning and internalizing and not trying to forget, right? You don't want that to fly out of your brain. You're putting all the time into the transcription so that it pays back dividends into the future. It pays back dividends of language, of feeling, of flow, of musicality, so many things, so many different things. And I think it's important to remember that when we're doing a transcription, we're not trying to memorize it. That's not what we're doing. We are not memorizing. In your practice recently, what have you been revisiting in terms of fundamentals? Well, trombone requires fundamentals at all times, any brass instrument really. So sound is the thing, and in particular doing whisper tones in order to kind of get the sound back together. I've got a bunch of little things coming up that I need to play for, so I'm trying to get some of those items together. But sound, it's all sound. So I'm going to do a solo not recital, but a solo stream on Monday. So next Monday, I've been doing streams with a trio, but to celebrate the release of the new album that's coming out on Friday. So we have this new album. It's called Out of Focus, and there's a bunch of solo playing on here. So I'm going to be playing a solo stream that's on Monday. On Monday the 15th. So the album comes out on Friday. So on Monday 15th, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be doing that right here. Same places, except not on Instagram, just on YouTube. For your newest record, what was the biggest challenge other than pandemic chaos when it came to producing the product you wanted? It was a whole new world for me. I've never made an album remotely. I've never, just like many people, I've never conceptualized of doing something without my group, whatever my group was at that time. Any recording I've ever done has been like a document of a group, whether it be a school group or whether it's my own group, a trio, a quartet, my sextet. And this record was a whole bunch of different things. And so the biggest thing was learning to kind of like mix 15 trombones. So there's one track on here. I did an arrangement of Mood Indigo for 15 trombones. And I played all the parts but one. Because I wanted to get a real bass trombonist. So a great bass trombonist named Jen Wharton played on one of these tracks. And then on a different track, on the Scanning Garrett tune, we have Reggie Chapman playing bass trombone. But learning how to like do a large ensemble mix, like I've mixed a lot of records, but I haven't mixed that many large ensemble records. So just getting like the sonic spacing of 15 voices and that kind of thing was pretty interesting, trying to sort that out. It was a little bit challenging just trying to show up and actually get it done, because the pandemic chaos really, certain days I didn't want to do it. And then I was like, no, you do want to do this. You want to do something with this time and have a nice little document when you're done. So, it took me a long time. It took a good part of a year to get, it's only 8 tracks. There's no original music, but it kept me, focused and gave me something to work towards. Have you ever played contrabass trombone? No, I have not. I'm not much of a doubler. I can do bass trombone for like a gig, totally, but like in terms of being a real doubler, it's not my strength. I'm more of an improviser than I am a doubler. I'll cop to that 100%. Any thoughts on how separate cultures view the trombone differently? I mean, yeah, sure. I think there's a big difference in how people look at trombone in American jazz music, even just like American pop music, like just that difference is big. Like a good friend of mine he's playing, he just was posting, he was playing with Gwen Stefani, right? And I was like, dang, like he's playing with Gwen Stefani. And like, that has a different thing than if I say, oh, I got to play with whatever jazz musician that's highly respected. There's a different cachet, and there's a totally different level of I don't know what you would call that. But what I think is really interesting is comparing that, even in classical music or jazz music, to like when I play salsa gigs or something. Like the trombone is viewed as like an essential part of the music, which is not the case in jazz, because in jazz sometimes we're like the extra. It's nice to have. It's not an essential. So I think it's nice to be in a setting where the trombone is viewed as an essential element. I think it's cool. And I think, if you've ever checked out like the United House of Prayer, they've got a whole thing, the trombone is the musical voice of that. And I think that's super awesome. And so the trombone, it would be great if more people wanted to dig on some trombone. But, different people have different opinions, and we'll just keep on going and keep playing and keep making music and do the best we can, man. So which records have you been spending lots of time with to get ideas of improving your sense of time? I think playing along with any record with a good drummer will improve your sense of time. So there's a lot there. I haven't been listening to anything in particular to focus on that. It's kind of like a twofold answer. It's like you got to play with great drummers, and the best thing we can do is use like those old records, like the old Blue Note records, where you can kind of like turn the left channel off and it's just drums, or turn the right channel off and it's just bass and no drums, so you can kind of hear, the drums and play along with the drums. There's both that and then playing along with a metronome and setting it to different beats. Like setting it to be the click is a bar, the click is 2 bars, the click is every 3 beats, the click is every 2 beats, those different things. So you're practicing both playing with someone else's time and then playing with good time against a computer, with exact time. So both of those things are important in terms of developing a good sense of time. He says, what exact role does the trombone have in salsa? Example, please. Well, I mean, the idea of having a traditional salsa group without trombones or without any brass at all is pretty unlikely. It's part of the music. It's part of the sound. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's part of the music. There's not that many groups that don't have trombone. I've played salsa gigs where it's only trombone and there's no trumpets. And of course there are bands now that don't have trombone, but all those great old records have trombone on them. That's what I mean. It's like an essential part of the music. That the horns are an essential part of that music. Like it's not just an afterthought. And sometimes in American pop music, it's an afterthought. If we have the money, we'll have a horn section. If we have, that kind of thing. But it's like in that music, it's like, no, it's part of the music. We want the horns. We want the solos. We want it. It's just viewed differently. It's not a nice to have. It's an essential. How do you conceptualize faster air? Well, that's something that a lot of people say in teaching. And so faster air, I think, also means something similar to focusing the air. Because by focusing the air, that means that you are having faster air. Like it's more compressed. It's more focused. All of those things are kind of getting at something similar. And a way to do that is there's 2 ways, right, to get faster air. One is to change the aperture of your embouchure. I'm going to say that again. Change the aperture, the part where the air comes through of your embouchure, obviously your chops, right? Make that bigger or smaller. Or you change the vowel sound on the inside of your mouth. So to get faster, more compressed air, if you raise your tongue in the back of your mouth, you go from ah and o, where the tongue is low, Just say those syllables, O, ah, and then E. And when you say O, ah, E, O, ah, E, you can see my jaw is coming up. You can hear, you can feel in your mouth that the back of the tongue is raising up. Oi, 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 oi. You can hear it, you can feel it, and that's compressing the air. It's focusing the air. It's sending it down the pipe, down the lead pipe. So there's those ways to think about it, and then there's different ways of thinking about, like, oh, you could think about blowing to the end of the horn. You could think about blowing through a straw. You know, it just depends on what situation we're trying to do and what problem we're trying to fix by saying faster air. But it's specifically like faster air to get higher notes. You're trying to compress the air, get it to be faster, to vibrate, so the higher pitches come out. What instrument would you gravitate towards if you didn't play trombone? Rhythm section, bass or drums. I like piano. It's too much. Too many notes to play. But probably bass or drums. I've got a drum set right there. For 2 years I've been saying I'm going to get better. I'm slowly getting better. But there's, one great example of like a hero, Chick Corea, plays great drums, man. Joe Lovano plays great drums. There's a recording of Michael Brecker and Chick Corea playing duo. 4 quartets is the record, and they play Confirmation. Chick's playing drums. And when I heard that, I was like, oh man, I got to get my drums together. You're welcome, Ben. I hope that helps you conceptualize it in a different way. So, for me, it's like, man, I get those drums together. So someday I'll get the drums together. And I got a bass back there too, and I've been trying to play bass. It's just, I always run out of time, or I get some other thing. Because now I'm trying to write a new record, I've got this grant, and so I got to write a new record, trying to finish that. Just a lot of things. When arranging for big band, especially when it's your own tune, how do you go about layering brass to be in a comfortable range? Well, I would a first place to start is like to learn the ranges of the instruments, learn the ranges of the trumpets and the trombones, and know what it sounds like when they play high and when they play middle and when they play low. And you just have to experiment, and you have to listen to different types of voicings, that sort of thing. So you got to do that. You got to learn what those things sound like. What somebody told me, with brass in particular, like you want to make sure that the sections sound good together. So you play the voicing and make sure that it sounds good. Don't just double them. Play an 8-note voicing. Maybe 2 of the notes are doubled. You just have to experiment. I'm not like a big band master arranger, so I'm not like the person to ask about this. But I feel, if it sounds good on the piano, it probably will be okay. But that's like, there's a big caveat there, because you got to really actually know what you're doing. So sounds and scores, Henry Mancini is a good place to start. I like that. Sarah Giacovino's here. She knows all about that. Great arranger and composer in terms of layering brass. She might have somewhere else to send you. Maybe she'll write it in the comments. My sight reading is getting rusty. What can I do on a daily basis to get new music to read? To get new music to read? I don't know. I just buy books, man. Buy stuff to read. There's a lot of resources online. You can read tunes. You can read parts. You can read etudes. You can buy books to get better at sight reading. You can just go to rehearsals and sight read. That's how I got my sight reading together. Just go to a bunch of rehearsals. Go move to New York and play like all the big band rehearsals, and your sight reading will get together pretty fast. But if that's not an option for you, which it might not be, you might, buy a bunch of books. Like if you got the Arbin's book, you'll never run out of stuff. By the time you get to the end, you can just start over again. Just read every day. Read every day. That's how you get better at reading. Read through the Roshu book, and then get the second Roshu book and read through that, and then get etude books, and you can find, I'm sure, if I don't have a specific place to send you, but if you search hard enough on the internet, you can find PDFs of a lot of things. May or may not be legal, but as long as you're just reading it for your own personal collection, you're probably going to be fine. But there's lots of stuff up there. I'm not sure if you spend a lot of time with studying psychology, but in terms of practice, what do you do to try and be less cerebral and more whimsical, imaginative? Well, the cerebral part comes in like organizing what you're practicing, or thinking about all the possibilities, what you could play. Like I try to ask myself that, like, what can I play on here? what would sound good? What would happen if? I mean, that's kind of whimsical too. That's what I try to say. Like, what is the? So, what are all the things I could play over this sound? You know, there's 12 notes. What would happen if I played any of them? You know, but I don't know if that's whimsical or not. But I try to use that word, try to remember to be imaginative. So sometimes it's like, well, yeah, that's the obvious answer. But if it's me and my own playing and I'm trying to figure out something to do for a record or something I'm practicing for, it's like, what else could I do? And just say, what could I do? And just experiment, go down the road, see how far down the road I can get and see if it makes any sense. Like, maybe it doesn't make any sense. Maybe it sounds bad. You know, I don't necessarily tie myself to one idea or another, but it's a question. And I keep this, I've said this on the stream probably before, but this is this little Figment from Disney. He's in the Epcot ride in the big ball, you know, and he sings the song, the imagination song. I keep him right here. Vibe the crap out of me when I'm not being interesting, when I'm not using my imagination, when I'm composing, you know. His name's Figment. Maybe that's silly, but that's a thing. And he sits right there. And he just when I look at it though, I'm like, oh man, that's like, am I being interesting? Am I creating something interesting? Or am I just like rehashing the same old stuff that I always write or always play? So I don't know. Your chops ever get stiff after playing long tones? How do you combat that? Yes, lip bends. That's the short answer. Lip bends and false tones. I know you do them on trumpet too when you get down those low pedal notes. Yeah, but doing that, pitch bends. I don't even do long tones solely really anymore. I try to combine them together and play like pitch bends, false tones, all that stuff, rather than just long tones. But long tones usually are helpful to me. Like if they're feeling stiff, like they help get unstiff, really, for me. But everybody's different, you know. But sometimes if they're already stiff, long tones don't help. I will say, I will admit that is 100% true for me, you know. And that's when pitch bends really come in handy. Curious, do you do long tones with a tongue attack? I do both. Sometimes I do like a gliss, and sometimes I do no tongue. But when I'm doing an exercise, like I like to do this one. I play like and that's no tongue, just all the way through. And it's like a long tone with motion. That's how I think about it. That's what Steve Turay used to say about slurs. They're long tones with motion, which is true. But yeah, no tongue, I guess. Because I try to compartmentalize, man. Like sometimes I'm trying to work on multiple things at once, which is often and very frequent. But like I try to think about one thing at a time. So sound, articulation, flexibility, all kind of like different camps of stuff that I got to make sure that I hit in a given day. So I don't have like a specific routine, but I do like something from each category, you know, like I got to work on sound, I got to work on articulation, and I got to work on flexibility, you know, being able to play whatever I need to play. And that might mean different things on different days. No, Alton, I don't think you're crazy for doing that at all. Personally, I don't, you know, you don't have to tongue them. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one exercise. There's a million exercises. And at a certain point, it makes sense to do the tongue and the slide together because you're really focusing on, you know, coordination, you're learning the trombone, all that stuff. But once you can play and you're working on more stuff, you're really focused on the sound. It doesn't really, I don't think you're losing anything. Is there any way to play two notes at the same time with trombones? You can't really play two notes. I guess technically somebody could prove me wrong that if you do the split tone thing, you can actually play two tones. That's not something I can do. But you can sing one and play the other. You play like the root, for example, and sing the third, and you can kind of get like a triad happening. So you know, you can do different stuff. You can like play like a tune. Like I'll play Mood Indigo, but like sing the melody and play the bass line. you know, if you're working on putting a record together and you want to include standard, was the best way to go about make sure you have the right permissions. Yeah, so you need mechanical licenses to do that, to press them, to press records. So the DSPs, Spotify, Apple Music, etc., they will pay those for you. But if you're going to sell any digital download, so if you're going to put it on Bandcamp or you're going to sell them off your website, you need to get mechanical licenses for those standards. So Harry Fox Agency, it kind of controls a lot of those. They have a website called Songfile, songfile.com. Sometimes that doesn't work, like the website is old. Sometimes it just doesn't function. But that's where I go first, is Songfile. And then, if that doesn't work, TuneCore has a licensing thing. So TuneCore licensing, I think it's called. And you can go there and you can buy exactly what you need. If you're going to sell like 100 downloads, you can buy 100, you can buy 50. And so for downloads, you need it. For streaming, you don't, because they will pay the mechanicals on that. Yeah, so that's where you go. Songfile first, Harry Fox Agency. And then from there, if they don't have it, go to check out TuneCore. Yeah. So, okay, thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate everybody being here, hanging out, and we'll be back next week. So have a great one, and we'll catch you next time.